Hello, everyone. Welcome to the SAG-AFTRA podcast. I'm Duncan Crouchy-Ireland, National Executive Director of SAG-AFTRA.
And I'm Ben Whitehair, Executive Vice President of SAG-AFTRA.
Podcasts have become an increasingly popular form of entertainment, with major entertainment companies, smaller independent producers, and individuals producing and distributing podcasts for millions of listeners.
Podcasts can be a great source of creativity, exposure, and income for performers who want to reach a wider audience.
Late last year, the union introduced 2 new podcast agreements that make it easy for producers to cover their podcasts. Whether your podcast is low budget or high budget, scripted or non-scripted, true crime, interview, or lifestyle, you can cover any genre using these new agreements.
The contracts are super simple and allow producers and performers to be flexible and creative. To walk us through them, we are joined by Sue-Ann Morrow, who is National Director, Contract Strategic Initiatives and Podcasts at SAG-AFTRA.
We're also delighted to be joined by Drew Roush and Jason Silva, executive producers of the upcoming scripted podcast, Macaw. The two have used the contract and will share their experience with it firsthand. Welcome to you all.
Yes, welcome to the podcast about podcasts.
It's very meta.
Well, I'm super excited to dive into this. Sue-Ann, I'd love for you to walk us through the 2 contracts, starting with Micropod agreement. Who's it for? What does it allow for? Why would members use it?
So the Micropod contract is perfect for members and podcast producers whose podcasts don't have a substantial amount of monetization yet or a high budget. Specifically, this contract is for projects that have or anticipate under $10,000 of budget and monetization combined. Monetization comes in lots of different forms, as podcasters know. So it can be advertising income, it can be Patreon and other patronage services. So if you're under $10,000, the Micropod would be right for you. The reason members would be interested in using this contract, the Micropod, and covering their work is similar to why folks cover their projects under the microbudget agreement. It's because they want to be covered under a union contract whenever they're behind a microphone. We were finding that a lot of members were coming to us and saying that they wanted to cover their podcasts in a simple, easy way, or work with their friends on a podcast in an easy way without having minimum rates or a difficult signing process. And so it's a super simple, very easy process that allows for a lot of creativity for our members.
I love that. Probably anybody listening knows that the scope of a project can vary greatly, and oftentimes it starts with something much more simple. Often, the budget is coffee and pizza and, a couch to sit on and a microphone that's there. So it sounds like that's a great option.
It's so true.
Moving up the production chain a bit, can you tell us a bit about the independent podcast agreement? What's unique about that, and when would people use that?
Yeah, the independent podcast agreement is more for podcast producers who are creating podcasts with professional performers and who have a budget or monetization of $10,000 or more. It's also a great fit for members who have an LLC or a corporation and who want to cover their podcast if they're generating substantial income. The major difference between the independent podcast agreement and the Micropod is that pension and health contributions can be made under the independent podcast agreement, and they're not required or permitted under the Micropod contract. The only other difference that I should mention is that you cannot gain eligibility from working under the Micropod, but you can get eligibility to join the union by working under the independent podcast agreement.
Cool. Let's turn to Drew and Jason if we can. And Drew, Jason, could you tell us a little bit about your new upcoming podcast, Macaw? Tell us a little bit about what it's about, and maybe talk a little bit about the casting process for it.
Absolutely, yeah. First of all, thanks for having us. It's great to be here. Jason and I, we just wrapped last week all of our principal recording for Macaw, and we immediately got on the phone with Sue-Ann and said, "Thank you, this is awesome. How can we help you spread the good word about these amazing contracts?" And 24 hours later, she had set us up with you guys, so we're happy to be here.
Fantastic.
Jay, you want to field question number 1?
Yeah, well, I just want to add to the context. I come from the filmmaking side, not the acting side, and scripted podcasts today are so important for people like Drew and myself, who we are content creators, and we are looking to new ways to tell stories as development. And so with the Micropod agreement, it was a way for us to not have to decide, are we working with the union, are we not? And sort of a way to walk into these big, wide open arms of SAG-AFTRA and to go, hey, this is development where we want to tell great stories and explore this new platform and have it be an awesome experience, but also like realistically, we don't know that we'll make any money on it, but our aim is to create content, and this is our way to be able to do that.
I've been a SAG member since I think 2008, and an equity member for years before that. Very, very pro-union guy. And when we got a hold of Sue Ann, the first thing that I said was, I want to make stuff with union members. I love the union. I love working with other union members. And I have, a couple decades of a career in film and television. You meet some amazing people that you want to collaborate with, and it's not always the easiest thing to just throw some of your friends in a booth if you want to work under an approved SAG contract. So it's so great to have this contract available to be able to create with other union members.
Well, it doesn't have to be like this dirty secret. Like, we're going to do this, but change my name. No, not going to condone that.
It sounds like you found the process pretty good for working with the union on the Micropod agreement. Can you maybe just share a little bit about what that was like from your perspective? And if somebody else was going to produce a similar type of podcast, what can they expect about how that works?
Sure. Jay and I wrote this series. We have a couple other things that we're working on getting produced as well, getting made and getting some funding for. And in the meantime, we wanted to write something that we could more easily bring into the world, like, that we could actually make. And so we wrote a scripted podcast. It's called Macaw. It's a wonderful little piece. And in the process of like trying to figure out how we're going to make it, I dove deep into the internet and found all sorts of blogs and all these testimonies from people that were at the time sort of forced to go through the new media contract and sort of like square peg round hole that into working for them. And I reached out to a couple different people at SAG, and people were very helpful trying to get me to the right place. And eventually I landed in front of Sue Ann, thank goodness. And she said, yeah, we've been working on these for a couple years now. And if you can wait 1 week, then you could possibly be the first podcast to work on this contract. And a week later, she sent us an application that was, what was it, Jay? Was it 2 pages long?
Yeah, I mean, it was like 2 pages. I think half of that was just signatures. Mm-hmm. And I do want to circle back a little bit because you asked about the process, and Drew did all this amazing research. He was like, look, we should do this as SAG. I'm like, absolutely, you take care of it. So he's doing all this research he's talking about, but he meets Sue Ann, and then they have a great convo. We all talk. So then we get to the process. It's a super short agreement, the SAG-AFTRA Micropod agreement. So the thing that could have been scary potentially for this endeavor, having to become a guild signatory and just all the paperwork and back and forth and other requirements. And it turned out to be quite seamless.
Yeah, no, the most wonderful, simple, straightforward, simple application process. And a shout out to Shane Griffin as well for her help on this. She and Sue Ann were just amazing in helping us get the process started. And basically within a few days of receiving the application, we were all set up and ready to go, ready to throw actors into a booth and have them make funny noises.
But then I would fast forward too, because I think it's 2 parts. It's one, getting the agreement together on the SAG-AFTRA end of things, but then it's another thing when the actors come in. We had 25 actors voicing 52 roles, plus, give or take, for our podcast over the course of 2 months. And their paperwork even was very streamlined, not complicated. There wasn't a bunch of back and forth with lawyers. And, that was the whole point of doing, we moved to LA to make stuff, not to pitch stuff, even though the reality is you got to do both. And in order for us to just make stuff and work with SAG-AFTRA on this, it was just something that was so seamless and easy that we were able to really put our energy into the other obstacles that we encountered, even though I must admit there were few.
Drew, you said that they had to make noises. Does that mean the macaw is a character in your podcast?
Well, Jason was responsible for the inspiration behind the actual macaw. We went down. We were having a lunch down at, was it the Mission Inn, Jay? Is that what it was?
Oh, I kept getting advertised this beautiful European-looking place in Riverside called the Mission Inn, and I'm like, there's no way this is an hour away. So I wanted to take my wife there, but I'm like, if it's cheesy or lame, I'm not going to go to those links. So I'm like, hey, Drew.
But I can take Drew somewhere cheesy and lame.
But Drew is my cheesy and lame guy. So I'm like, hey, I'm going to this place for lunch. You want to join me? And just checking it out. I'll drive. And so we went along. And so, we're having lunch, and we were just talking through projects, what we wanted to put our attention into next. And so we're working through what later became this podcast. But I look over and they've got like in a giant cage, literally 3 macaws. And they've got this mosaic on the ground of marble and tile, and it's a macaw. And I'm like, you know what? We need something really catchy, one of those one-name titles that doesn't mean anything on its own, but it'll be a symbol. So this should totally be called Macaw.
The birds were talking to him. He communes with the birds.
Yeah.
So we have this, to answer your question about what the podcast is really quickly, it's a 6-episode. The script ended up being about 180 pages, so you're looking at about half-hour episodes each one, and it follows our hero, Ron Amundsen, who is very much a workaholic, and through his employer's new health and wellness program, they tell him he's got to use some of his 52 weeks of paid leave that he's got and sign him up for a cruise on the Pleasures of the Sea cruise lines on their flagship cruise ship, the Macaw.
And what he doesn't realize is this isn't a normal cruise, it's a motivational cruise. And so everybody there is there to just get enmeshed in the teachings of this overly zealous motivational speaker named Ernie Macked Up Bigman.
You got to get macked up to get jacked up.
And over the course of 6 episodes, he goes from completely doesn't want to be on this experience to having an existential crisis to a revelation to then questioning if he's actually just inside of a simulation.
You know, standard stuff for a Tuesday.
I mean, in this day and age, this all tracks for me, and I think I see a potential expansion route for the podcast into your own series of adventure cruises, and I think that sign me up for that cruise.
Fantastic, but
Especially if there's a motivational speaker element to it. I think.
we're bringing Ben on the writing staff.
I'm here for it. Well, I always love hearing the behind the scenes of what it takes to make what sounds like a really exciting project and storytelling, and I know myself and fellow members and producers out there who can sometimes be daunted by the behind the scenes work that it takes to do what, like you said, what you want to do. Like, what stories do we want to tell? How do we want to dig in? What other friends, these amazing members we want to work with? I'm curious, Sue Ann, from your perspective, these agreements sound pretty universally applicable. Is there are there any certain podcasters who should not use these agreements?
No, I mean, I think that really it's as Duncan mentioned in his opening, the content in podcasts is as varied as the video content that SAG-AFTRA covers, and they're scripted dramatic that are like audio-only versions of TV and film, and there's podcasts that are like audio-only versions of a late-night talk show where a host interviews folks, and there's podcasts that are like human interest broadcast radio shows that we've been listening to for decades, and there's audio-only game shows, and there's investigation, and all of those things can be covered under a SAG-AFTRA agreement, really. This content is professional media content, and the people who are making it deserve the same protections and the same respect and the same union contracts that performers and broadcasters get when they work under a contract for video content. So almost anybody can cover their podcast under a SAG-AFTRA contract. And the only other thing I wanted to just mention is, one of the reasons why I was so glad that these guys were able to be on is that we've been covering podcasts for years, but we realized that with the huge growth in the space and the speed with which these podcasts are being produced, I mean, they're produced so quickly that we needed to streamline the process for producers of signing the projects, and that we needed to have dedicated contracts that were really tailored for an audio-only space. And so when they showed up at our door, they were sort of the exact reason why we had decided to overhaul and streamline both the process and the contracts, and to create a dedicated podcast department and have dedicated podcast staff to make it possible for folks like this to make the kind of creative projects that they want to as quickly as they need to.
If you don't mind you jumping in real quick, like that's what Jason and I were so excited about coming on and talking to other SAG members about, other creators about, SAG-AFTRA members, and reminding them that there is a really easy way that you can, with your other SAG-AFTRA friends, you can get together, you can make stories, you can tell stories. Jason and I were talking, and he said something to the, I wrote it down when he said it. He said that there's just such immense storytelling development that is happening in podcasts right now, and to be able to fill out effectively like is it actually 2 pages? I want to get that right, Sue Ann. Is it
the process right now? It is an online form. It's roughly 2 pages long, yeah. And then there's the actual Micropod contract, which is what you guys signed. And with the independent, there's a separate contract as well. We are actually going to have a new podcast portal that's going to be, if you can imagine, even more streamlined in its approach to coverage, even more automated, and we hope to have that launched by, within the next week or two. So by the time this podcast goes live, that portal should be up, and it should be even easier to sign your podcast as a member or a producer.
That's amazing. That's just absolutely incredible because you hear people say all the time, like I saw a post, I think from Jason Alexander not too long ago, where he's saying like, you got to get out there and you got to make the stuff. You got to tell the stories. You got to be the cameraman and the writer and all this stuff. That's all well and good. But until like there is an easy, simple, straightforward way to actually feel like you can do that, there's still barriers to entry. It can still seem incredibly daunting. And to know that this tool is available, I hope so many different SAG-AFTRA creators take advantage of it and decide to tell their own stories, because it is a great way to build a story and bring it further into the world.
That's amazing. I was going to ask you, Jason and Drew, like what your tips or advice might be for people who are going to use the contract. And I'm gathering that one of them would definitely have to be reach out to Sue Ann. But beyond reaching out to Sue Ann or Shane, who are amazing and really appreciate the shout outs to both of them, any other tips or advice for how you can use this contract to make your podcasting journey easier?
It literally was so straightforward that we tell anyone who's thinking about doing the podcast, hey, because we know they don't know about this contract yet potentially, so we've been sort of evangelists for it. We're just saying, hey, depending on your budget size, SAG-AFTRA has the Micropod budget agreement, they've got the indie agreement, and it's super easy now. Sue Ann's great. She probably doesn't want to get flooded with outreach.
Too late.
Oh, flood me. Go ahead. Go ahead with the flooding. It's fine.
The line around the block.
Flood away, but it really, it is, I would say, very straightforward and self-explanatory. I can't think of another organization I've had to interface with that has been this easy. So I'm always wondering where the catch is, but we're pretty far along, so I think we would have experienced it by now.
I just want to quickly say that I'm so glad that you put it that way, because I wanted to make sure that we made the point that our approach to podcasts is just a great example of the way that the union has become more flexible and more nimble in recent years as the industry has demanded it, with new technologies and content and platforms driving innovation in the entertainment and media spaces. The new podcast contracts are another example, there's lots of them, of SAG-AFTRA responding really effectively and efficiently to a major development in the media world. So I'm so glad that that your experience is that was what you felt, that it was that the union was able to turn quickly and make what you needed to have happen. Because that's what we're really here for, to help cover and protect performers, but also to help producers hire those performers in a way that's going to be both safe and efficient.
Yeah. So Sue Ann, if someone's listening to this, they are creating a podcast, how do they actually connect with these contracts with the union in order to move forward?
So there's two ways. You can either go to the website, sagaftra.org/podcast contracts. There's a dedicated page there for podcasts, and you can sign up your project there through the portal. Or you can email us directly at podcastcontracts@sagaftra.org. Podcast contracts, plural, at sagaftra.org. And we'll take care of you.
Sounds easy enough. Jason and Drew, I'm really curious to hear, you both are storytellers. You've been in this industry. You've worked yourselves and worked with so many people. I've been listening to podcasts for well over a decade, but I feel this really powerful resurgence. I mean, I've seen it even in the auditions I get, more and more scripted podcasts. And I'm curious if you have any thoughts or advice to fellow storytellers out there who are looking for ways to get stories out there. How viable is podcasting as a medium to do that? Any advice for anybody who's listening and maybe thinks, what, this script idea I have might actually make a good podcast? What are the pros or maybe some of the cons? But would you recommend people think about that?
As a filmmaker getting into podcasting these last few years, I'll start with this. The thing that's frustrating about filmmaking when you're in that model of just go make it yourself, yeah, you're going to raise money, you're going to get hired, you're going to do bigger budget, more fully resourced projects. But the passion projects, the things you really wanted to get out there and make, the barrier to entry is so great. Yeah, you can go shoot it on your phone and, there's exceptions. But generally, the type of content that most of these filmmakers who say this, myself included, that they want to make, there is a threshold on how to just even get something down. Podcasting is so much more accessible. You still need a great place to record that's quiet, or like Drew said, to get your actors to make sounds into microphones. But I love that. Hey, Drew always reduces everything down to where it's almost like primitive.
Just grunts and glottal stops.
Yeah.
You say words sometimes.
Very little script, just sort of letters on a page.
Ben Wright.
I think like just to get back to, the yes for the development pipeline, podcasts are really much more viable today than they were 10 years ago even. So it's worthwhile to get into it just for that reason. But the one thing I would caution anyone who's getting into it, you can't just take your film script and just go, oh, well, I'll just read this, perform this into microphones, and that'll be a podcast. The podcast space is its own platform, and I really think you should, even if you're adapting something, think of telling your story as rebuilding as an audio-only story from the ground up. And one thing and we listen to a lot of podcasts as well, and still, even today, as advanced as we've become, so many podcasts are narrated. They're being read to you essentially, or there's one person just guiding you through the story through voiceover, which is totally fine and can be great, but it's not the only way in the scripted space. And so with McCall, that was one of our rules. We're like, there's no narrator. We're fully immersed in the scenes and the setting, and we need to be sure that how we write, how we produce, how we direct this, that the listener experiencing this story can understand where they are, follow along, know who's who, and be just as invested as they would be if they were watching or binging a series on their screen at home. So we really wanted to tell a story that was completely dramatized and immersive, no narration, no voiceover. And I could tell you, working through the assemblies right now, that I feel like we've achieved that.
It almost sharpens you as a storyteller because it forces you to decide exactly what you want the listener to be hearing at the time. So you really curate that soundscape much more intentionally. I remember when I was a kid, I used to love, you'd see the old videos of like on camera radio plays being produced and the guys with all the noisemakers and like, making steps as somebody walks up. I used to love that. And so it was so great to get into that, like that intentional audio scripting space to make everything, to really thoroughly and thoughtfully consider everything that's going into the soundscape, the atmosphere, and the storytelling experience for a listener. It's really
I think
cool.
we need some audio effects on this podcast.
I think
we're
so,
gonna have
too.
to,
I think
we're
we
going to have
need
to
to
work
work on
on that
that.
for a future episode.
If we want to,
John,
Drew and I
Aaron.
will make some random sounds and noises that you can intersperse throughout podcasts.
Totally.
would be
I'll handle the
great.
grunting
Done.
and you get a slide
Done.
whistle, Ben.
Drew and Jason, I have a selfish question as a performer for any fellow members out there who are getting auditions or want to get auditions for scripted podcasts. Any words of wisdom or advice for auditioning in this medium? How is it different, or is it different at all than the types of auditions that we're used to?
Oh, that's a good question. Drew, I feel like you should answer like from as an auditioner, and then I'll answer from like a director.
Yeah, Duncan had asked earlier as well, like what was the casting process like? And a lot of it was, people that we knew wanted to be part of it. It was a lot of people that had helped us in various readings of the different iterations of the scripts as we went through, and then would do something that was so obviously the voice that we all of a sudden clicked and we were like, yes, and then we would write to that person. My wife is also a casting director, Jamie Castro. So we brought her in to help us cast a lot of the other voices as well. But what becomes so very important in a series like this, again, it's audio only. And so it's a lot the diversity of vocal quality that you're looking to assemble. And that's really, Jason as the director, that was so much his design. I'll turn it over to him to talk about that now. But like that, what we found was more often than not, we would fall back on vocal diversity, vocal quality.
Well, I would say in terms of auditioning, yes, I mean, having a diversity of voices, because it gets crowded fast in an audio-only space, was really important. But in terms of the actors auditioning for their parts, there's like two categories. The first category was like, okay, big character who's in a lot of the podcast, who needs to be very distinct for a certain reason. I think that just came down to who could really embody that character. And, it's like the way, certain people could really leap off the screen, like you needed someone whose voice would leap out of the headphones and could really stand out to be unique. And how do you determine what that is? You can't really. It's just kind of down to taste. But so that was like the one category. So like there's so many actors who I know that they only do one voice because their voice is so distinct. And to lean into that is so great and so key. But then there's the other actors who fall into the other bucket, which was really helpful in consideration. We've got 52 plus roles that we need to cast. We don't want to cast 52 different actors. Some of them might only have a few lines or their scenes are in different episodes. And so it was really great to hear from actors who could do a range of voices or, pitch up or pitch down and not to make it caricature-y, but we knew like this one actor could give us 5 voices and we wouldn't have any idea it was the same actor. That was so valuable. There's so much other stuff in the soundscape. Like we're in a casino in a lot of our scenes. We needed people just kind of talking, the Walla Walla or nearby. You hear snippets of conversation. So to have those really versatile actors was so great. And in terms of auditioning, if you get the chance to show a diversity in a couple approaches, I would say do it. Don't put all your eggs into that one take if you can. I mean, it depends on what you're reading for and how long the sides are that are sent. But if you can, at least give some extra options to show your range. And if you don't have a range, just really lean into that thing that makes you distinct, because both are equally important.
Love it. How can listeners find out more about Macaw?
Other than the people involved, we haven't really talked about it publicly. So this is the first time really doing that.
Woo. An exclusive.
If they want to follow us,
exclusive, a scoop.
If they want to follow us, on socials, on Instagram, then they'll start to see those announcements as we get a little closer to summer, which is our intended launch. And also, we're excited to share the amazing actors who have worked on this and whose voice talents you'll be experiencing with this. For me, it's at Jason O. Silva. And Drew, what's yours?
At Drew J. Roush.
Wonderful. Well, Drew, Jason, Sue-Ann, thank you so much for being here and walking us through both some of the creative process, which I certainly love hearing about, and also hearing about, all of the, again, behind the scenes, technical contract things that we know are required to make and get these quality stories out to the world. And I'm so glad that in the podcasting space, it's just getting easier and easier. So Sue-Ann, and to the rest of the SAG-AFTRA staff who's been helping to make this possible, and the other members who've been involved in streamlining these contracts and this work, I'm optimistic that we'll continue to see even more wonderful storytelling in this medium. So thank you all so much for joining us.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you so much. The podcast about podcasts, I'm loving it. It's been great, so informative and inspiring too. So
Can't thank you enough for having us, and I'm so excited. I'd like genuinely, Sue-Ann, thank you for the work that you've done on this, and Shane as well, of course, who's not here. But I feel like very frequently as a member of a 160,000 person union, it's difficult for all the squeaky wheels to get the grease that they need. But I feel like this is a remarkable tool for so many SAG-AFTRA members to be able to step into the storytelling arena. And I really genuinely thank you from the bottom of my heart for getting this work done.
Gosh, thanks. Thanks for being here and saying that.
For more information and resources from today's episode, please visit sagaftra.org/podcast. And if you gained any value from today's podcast, please consider sharing it with someone else who might find value. If you haven't already, please tap that subscribe button and take a few seconds to rate and review this episode. And please follow SAG-AFTRA on our official social media channels. That's at SAG-AFTRA on all major platforms, including YouTube.
The SAG-AFTRA podcast is produced and edited by Aaron Goddard and John Small. Supervising producers are Pamela Greenwald, Shira Reich, and Michael McNulty, with production and marketing support from Damon Romine, Jolie Cocante, Delaney Howard, Margot Giordano, Joe Mulgado, May Wong, Bernadine Robbins, and Maria Cabezas. The podcast is hosted by Ben Whitehair and me, yours truly, Duncan Crabtree Ireland.